Hey, what's up everybody? This is Austin. A cousin of mine reached out the other day and told me he was interested in learning martial arts, and after chatting with him, we decided the best way to begin was to hang a punching bag at home. In his case, he ended up getting a 6-foot Thai style bag, so I wanted to put a video together to teach him basic ways of punching it, kicking it, kneeing it, stringing techniques together, and making use of this tool as efficient as possible. I've been playing with punching bags my whole life, and I've come up with some good tips and tricks that I think will not only be helpful for him, but for you as well. This video is aimed at beginners, but if you're intermediate level, you might get something out of it as well. So give it a look. If it's something you find helpful and you enjoy it, give it a like. If you want more content like it, get subscribed. I've got big plans for the future, and I'd like to bring you along. All right, let's get started. Before you get started, the first thing I want to talk about is what to do with your hands. You've got three options. You can go bare knuckle, you can go glove only, or you can go hand wrap with a glove on top. Now, hand wrap with the glove on top is going to be the safest. It's going to protect your hands, the tiny bones in your hands, your knuckles, your wrists. It's going to give you a lot of support, and it's the most recommended of the three, especially as a beginner. Or even if you know what you're doing, if you're going to be throwing your weight behind these shots, you want to make sure to have that extra support and protect your hands. The other two options are worth exploring though. So if you punch only with hand wraps on all the time, sometimes you can develop bad habits where you are hitting things without your bones necessarily stacked correctly, and you're not aware of it because the extra support sort of muffles the pain and feedback you would get back from the bag, right? So another option is to train bare knuckle. This is the way I learned first. And when you're doing this, you need to go super, super light, like 5%, 10% power, no joke. And the idea is to learn how to line up the bones correctly and how to stack everything so you can hit without hurting yourself, either in a self-defense scenario or just to avoid injuries on the punching bag itself. So when you make a fist, make sure it's nice and expanded. I like to pretend I'm holding a fist pack like a roll of quarters or a lighter or something like that. Don't get a curve in your fist. You want these knuckles lined up and stacked, thumb tucked out of the way. I want to hit with these two knuckles, the index and middle finger, and I imagine splitting that line down my radius and ulna with my elbow. So this is easy enough to do on a straight punch, but once you start throwing hook punches, it becomes a little more difficult to keep that elbow behind the knuckles, but it's imperative that you do so rather than trying to lead in with the knuckles as you might with a wrist wrap on, right? You don't want to develop any bad habits. So remember, knuckles lined up with the elbow. And when you're working bare knuckle on the bag, very light, almost no power. You can give it a little pop, but don't throw your weight behind it. Don't try to sink into the bag itself. You don't want to tweak your wrist, okay? Now, another thing you got to think about is you can bruise your knuckles and you can cut your knuckles up. Bruising the knuckles can happen even if you're throwing with proper form. So whenever you're doing barehanded training, go not only light, but only for a short amount of time. You just want to develop good habits and allow time for your connective tissue to build to be able to absorb that shock. If you just go for it right away, you're going to hurt yourself, almost guaranteed. Now, the other thing is that if you hit the punching bag and glance off at any point, especially if you have a canvas bag, something with a texture, it can take your skin off, and once that happens, you got to wait for that to heal before you can continue to train, and that's not efficient. So anytime you're going bare knuckle, go super duper light. Don't want to hurt yourself. Third option is glove only with no wrist wraps. Now, you've got the same idea as the bare knuckle, as in you're not going to have much wrist support. You need to make sure everything's lined up correctly, which is good for habit building. But when I'm going with glove only and no wrist wrap, I tend to focus on speed and snap of the punch rather than momentum, where I'm not throwing my full weight behind it, just in case something goes wrong. I don't want to be tweaking that wrist. But the glove will, however, pad your knuckles, so you can go at it for a long time, assuming that you know how to stack your bones correctly without bruising up your knuckles and slicing up your knuckles, so it's not a bad option there. Before beginning your heavy bag workout, you want to think about what you're trying to get out of this session. I like to use the punching bag for one of three things: either individual skill cultivation, such as working on my jab, working on my kick, that sort of thing, trying to perfect a singular art. There's overall skill development, just how well everything flows together, how I'm putting combinations together, how the whole aspect of the fight, right? And then the third option is for the sake of fitness. You can use it to increase your power, increase your speed, or work cardiovascular technique. Now you can do just one of these, you can do all three, you can do whatever combination you like depending on what your focus is, but it's helpful to think about this ahead of time. All right, in the spirit of cultivating individual technique, I want to go over a couple of the bread and butter techniques. Now bear in mind there's plenty of correct ways to throw these techniques. These are just the ones that I've grown to love with experience and the ones that I wish I had been taught initially. So I'm going to go over the jab, the rear straight, the hook punch, the low kick, the spear knee, and the teep. These are the most important techniques, especially to begin with, right? So stance, weight's going to be 50-50 to begin. Lead toes facing the target, hand in front, chin tucked. Now I don't want my chin too far down. I just get a nice hunch in my back where my shoulders can easily rise to protect my chin, and my forehead is leading the charge. When I've got this nice hunch, if a punch is approaching, the closest thing is my forehead, which is nice and hard, versus if I'm completely upright, the closest thing is either going to be my nose or my chin, which both are not fun to be punched there, right? So we're here. Just as important as what the punching hand does is what the guarding hand does. So watch, I'm going to do this open hand so you can see the way the knuckles roll over. So arm only, it's going to extend forward, elbows down, and at the last second, elbow flares up to turn those knuckles over. So elbow rises to flip that fist, and then it drops down to help the retraction. So I want to go straight from about eyebrow height to the target and back. Now while I do this, the other hand is going to stay close, and I'm going to keep this elbow tucked in tight to my ribs. I'm going to answer the phone up here with my chin tucked. That way I'm guarded to a counter, and you end up nice and tight with not many options for counter punches, right? So this is just the hand. So remember, elbow flips, comes back down to get guarded, and I'm clogging up this lane, so I'm ready to do what I gotta do as quick as possible. Now this is just the hands. The guarding hand, as I tuck that elbow, that helps pull into the rotation a little bit, and then you can add your feet. Right now my feet are stationary. The classic way is to push step forward, when you're throwing a jab, make sure to maintain your range. You don't want to crowd yourself, right? You want to use this as a distance keeper, whether you're going forward, backward, left, right, and so on. Now this jab is helpful because this same motion, not only can you dig your knuckles in and punch, you can also use it as a long guard or a lead frame to keep them at the distance you want. So you can use it to create distance, you can use it to maintain distance, whatever it is you need. Now, anytime you're throwing a punch, make sure that you breathe out as you do it. Got it? Now, another good way to throw a jab is to take a step forward with just the lead and push back to range. Eventually, once you get comfortable with this, you want to be able to jab forward, jab backward, jab left, jab right, jab at angles. You want to have a variety of movement patterns, okay? The next punch you want to work on is the rear straight. You'll often hear this called the cross. I prefer to call it the straight because I'm throwing it straight down the pipe. Now, at my guard, what I like to do is take an initial step slightly forward and slightly outside with that lead. And what that does is it brings this rear arm in line with the target. So rather than throwing across my own body, I'm bringing this rear hand in line with the target, and I'm going to pivot this rear foot to help turn my hip over. And as my hip turns, I'm going to pull this guarding hand in. So I'm tucked up like normal. This is coming to my ribs, and that's going to help the rotation. As this extends forward, turns over. And I retract back to my stance. So I'm stepping out, pushing my weight forward, rotating, digging this elbow in. This goes straight down the pipe towards the chin, nose, whatever the target is, retracts back to a balanced stance. So we're moving. Remember to exhale. Anytime you have a straight punch, you want full extension. Now with both the jab and the straight, remember with that extended arm, that chin is actually tucked behind the shoulder as an extra layer of defense. Step out, pushing my weight forward, rotation of the hips, shoulders, torso, everything together, aided by this elbow digging into the ribs. Exhale, straight forward, retract back to stance. I'd like to go over a variation of the rear straight, and this would be the rear straight to the body. So it's almost exactly the same. Same step out, same rotation. The only difference is that as I go to the body, I want to drop my level and I want to pull my head further offline to sink down, right? So if I throw straight to the body but I don't move my head offline, I'm very open to a counterpunch, especially if that arm drops and my chin is exposed. So I need to lower my level, get my head off the center line, meaning right now it's on the center line, getting it out of the way, and my level drops so that way I can maintain good extension with that punch and have good coverage at the same time. So a normal straight, body straight, body straight. This is a great punch, especially against a southpaw fighter with that right foot forward. The next technique is the basic left hook. This will generally happen when your weight's already forward. So after I threw a right straight, for example, and I'm going to transfer my weight from this lead leg to the rear leg. And as that happens, I'm going to rotate my body. You can let this pivot. You can do it without the pivot. It's your choice. But I'm turning my body. And at the last second, I'm going to let this elbow flare up and cut across the center line. So if the target's right here, rather than open up and hit, I'm getting to the side of it and I'm cutting across. Now you can throw this thumb up, which is great for close range. You can throw it thumb towards you, which is great for mid-range, or you can even rotate the thumb down for longer range. Basically, the further it gets away, the more my knuckles rotate to make sure my wrist stays in alignment, right? So I like to start with my weight forward so I can practice the transfer as I pull this into the ribs to let that through, right? So a good way to practice. Weight's forward, this pulls in, this helps transfer the weight. I want to go over a variation of the lead hook, and this is the liver punch in this case, right? Now, it's kind of a hook, kind of an uppercut. Some people call it a shovel hook. It depends. I adjust it depending on where they're guarding, right? So the head hook, it's like so. Now you can throw a hook like that down to the body, but it feels a little awkward on the angle of the knuckles. So what I prefer to do instead is turn my palm up slightly, so I'm not completely up, not completely thumb up. I'm about 45 right there. So same thing with the weight forward, head offline, elbow tucked to the ribs. It initiates from the ribs. I'm going to line it up with the target, and as this pulls to rotate, stabbing it in and up slightly. So rather than around, goes up and in. Start weight forward. Right there. Now notice I'm not transferring my weight entirely back. I'm staying fairly forward and going to be about 50-50, and I'm thinking about digging that hip up and in to send those ribs across to the opposite side. You're trying to target the liver on this side. Now, like I said, you need to adjust depending on where their arms are. So if he's guarded here, this angle is going to be blocked. That's the time I'm going to go around with a wider hook. If he is here, then it's a good chance to stab in the middle. If he's here, I go around, right? So either way, weight here. Now this is nice to double up with a hook, or you can double up with an uppercut, whatever your preference is, right? Point is, weight forward, head offline, body's exposed, dig in to that liver. The next technique I want to talk about is a rear low round kick. Make sure you're striking with your shin on this, and in order to protect your joints, stretch your leg out as far as possible. Stretch the hips, stretch the knee, stretch the ankle, stretch the toes. This will give you more range and it'll protect your joints as you do it. So in my stance, I'm going to step forward slightly and to the outside slightly, turning my toes to about 45 degrees. Notice my heel is up and I'm facing this way. I want my momentum to carry this way, like I'm going past the target, and I'm going to let that weight transfer become part of the kick. So as my weight is transferring up, leg is going to come up and rotate across, right? So as I do this, you'll notice I pivot from about 45 degrees to about 90 degrees, and that'll help me cut through that center target. Now, my left hand, gonna elbow dig to the ribs, hand answers the phone, and I want to think about crossing my right shoulder past the target, whether that's the punching bag or the person. Now, for extra power, you can do a full arm swing, but with a low kick, you run the risk of getting counterpunched, so I often like to swing it and leave it in front like a frame. So I'm stepping, my hips are going to rotate, answering the phone, swinging this frame as I kick. Now obviously, if you kick like this in a fight, you run the risk of getting bombarded while you're turned around. This is just for the sake of learning that turnover, right? So stepping, answering the phone, swinging across, hip cutting through. So I've got no intention of stopping all the way through the target. The next technique that you need to know is the teep. In this case, I'm going to do a lead teep. So this is a front push kick. So from my stance, my weight transfers to this back leg. I'm going to bring this knee up and I'm going to push forward, leading with the ball of my foot. And as I do that, I'm going to swing this arm down as a counterbalance while this stays tucked in nice and tight. Make sure knee comes up, foot pushes forward, knee comes back in case they try to catch it. That way you can get your foot back and exhale as you do it. This is sort of like a jab with the legs. Extra power, extra reach. It's a nice one to know. So you can push with the ball of the foot, and you can't tell because I've got shoes on, but I'm curling my toes back and I'm leading with the ball of the foot. And if you get a little better, later on you can dig your toes in, but don't worry about that for now. So notice weight is supported on this leg. I can either transfer my weight back to keep them at a distance, or if I need to push them back, I can slide this foot underneath to make up that range, right? All right, the last technique I want to cover is the spear knee. So in this case, I'm going to be doing the rear leg, and I'm going to take a step forward and off to the side. The same way that I wanted to line up my rear straight with the target, I want to line up this rear knee with the target. So I'm not bringing the knee around, I'm lining it up with the target and I'm stabbing it through. Now, when you throw this knee, there's a couple things that are important. So you want to have your foot tucked as close to your butt as possible with your toes pointed. This will not only make the knee sharper, but it will make it harder for people to grab and sweep. The other thing is, rather than my foot being directly below my butt, I'm going to have it rotated to the outside quite a bit, or not quite a bit, just a little bit is what I mean rather. And this will help, once again, to not get caught, but it also help extend that hip into it, right? So I'm here, take a step forward into the outside, and what I like to do is lead with this hand as a blinder. So I can either blind or I can grab the top of the head and work to pull them in to the same side knee while the other side's guarding. When you do this, I want to rise on the ball of my foot. I'll get extra extension with my hip there, and I'll be able to stab it in a little bit harder, and you'll get more range in the process. So when I'm doing this, it's important that my hip is stabbing in. So I'm not just lifting my leg. I'm not just stabbing my hip forward. What I do is I take a step and I swing. And as I swing, it's like a pendulum. And when that momentum's going forward, I put my hips behind it. When training this knee, try and find out exactly how far you can extend that knee before you need to set your weight down. So if I knee and I fall forward, I went too far. But at the same time, a knee that's too short is no good, right? So remember, rise up on the ball of the foot, send that out as far as you can, and bring it back in. Remember to be guarded on this side, because if I have this hand low as I knee, you can get caught with a counter punch, right? So, blind, grab the head, step, pull them into that knee. Certain techniques pair together well in what I like to call sets. So rather than a combination where it's a lot of techniques strung together, sets are two techniques that can be used interchangeably and work kind of like peanut butter and jelly. So the first set I want to go over is the combination of the jab and the teep. Now what's great about this is you can step into your jab, follow up with a power teep. You can throw your jab, fade back, throw your teep. You can throw your teep, step down into your jab. You can fake a teep, throw a jab. You can fake a jab, throw a teep. Now, just having these two working together can keep your opponent guessing. It's really hard to deal with. One set of techniques that works really well together is the combination of the rear straight and the lead hook. Now, whether that's to the body or the head, there are lots of combinations and they work so well together because of the weight transfer and the torque you can get from rotating your body left to right, front to back. So the same way that I taught you to start weight forward into your hook, you can throw the rear straight into the hook. So that's a classic combination. They call it a 2-3. Step, boom. Straight, hook. Straight, hook. Straight, hook. Now, you can do the same thing in the opposite order. So, weights forward, throw, hook, straight. Hook, straight. They work endlessly together. You can do it in place, you can do it covering distance, you can do it making distance. I can come in, I can step back, I can do angles, right? There's all kinds of different options here. Now you can also combine body punches to change levels and make it more difficult to intercept, right? So it doesn't have to be just to the top. You can throw straight to the body, hook to the head. You can throw straight to the head, hook to the body. You can throw hook to the body, straight to the body. Anytime you mix up these combinations, it becomes that much more difficult for your opponent to keep up with you, right? So you're moving. What's nice about this, you throw the straight, if they block, often they're open on the side. If you throw the hook and they block on the side, often they're open up the middle. If you throw to the body, they often collapse down, which opens up room for that hook up top. If you throw straight up top, it often blinds them and brings their guard up high. so you can slip in a body punch below. So remember, rear straight, left hook, whether to the body, to the head. Doesn't even need to be right-left, it can be left-right. Just the combination of those punches is endless and powerful to terrorize your opponent. The next set of techniques that works really well is a combination of a lead hook, whether to the head or the body, and a low kick. So this works in either order, but it's great because you can throw a hook to the head, which already winds your body and is ready to unwind into that low kick. So that's a common tactic. Hook, low kick. Hook, low kick. Throw it to the body. Hook, low kick. Hook, hook, low kick. What's nice about this too is that if you imagine the hook approaching on this side, what it does is it often knocks the weight onto this opposite leg, and when this leg's heavy, you can chop into it with a kick without worrying about them raising their knee and checking the kick. So if you can put their weight on that lead leg, you've got a free kick right there. So hook, nice and heavy, set their weight to the side, follow up with a low kick. Hook to the body, same idea, follow up with the low kick. Now you can also use the hook after landing the low kick. Now I'm cutting all the way through because I'm not hitting any resistance, but if you can imagine a slam into a leg, a good thing to do is as I swing this leg back to my original position, I can throw a long hook to keep my distance. So, kick, hook, hook, kick, body hook, kick, kick, body hook, double up. Works endlessly, right? Hook, kick, hook, kick, hook, kick. Anytime you've got this left to right rotation, you can keep it going for a long time to frustrate your opponent. There are times when you want to throw longer combinations of attacks to set up one particular technique. So whenever you're coming up with a combination, have the end in mind, think about what you're trying to land, what punch, what kick, that sort of thing, and then think about how to set it up. And once you think about how to set it up, think about how to enter in safely. And once you figure that out, don't forget to think about how to exit safely. So one easy combination you'll see taught on day one is a 1, 2, 3 low kick, right? So that's a jab, cross, hook, low kick. Easy peasy. Now remember, the goal here is to land the low kick. All the other techniques, if they work out, great. But the idea is I want to distract up top so I can slam that low kick in. So the jab, stepping with it, and that serves to set up the cross by blinding and opening up space. So I land that rear straight rather. From there, if their guard is forward, they're likely open on the side. And whether or not they block this hook, it's likely to knock their weight to that lead leg, follow up with a low kick. So that's a good one to practice. Now, knowing the combination isn't enough. You got to think about how to get in there, right? Whenever you're throwing a jab, you don't want to just stand in your opponent's face because they can be hitting you too. So you're generally starting from a distance, trying to maintain your space. And I like to shoot in with the jab to cover range and try to split their guard with that. Now I've got this line of fire, throwing the straight down that, hook, sets up the low kick, boom, and then you want to think about how to exit out. So you can exit out either with a long hook or exit out with a jab. So remember, the goal is to land that low kick. You set it up with a 3-punch combination. You enter in with a slight angle and a push from your rear foot, and you exit with a hook or a long jab. Either way, coming away from the danger. One helpful set is the combination of the lead teep and the rear knee. And as I do this, I'm going to be using my long guard to blind, frame, and grab things along the way. So first I like to establish my teep with jabs, teeps, make them worry about this teep. Once they believe it, once they believe it's a threat, you can fake the teep, step down, and follow up with that rear knee. So the teep is a long-range weapon. The knee is a mid-range weapon, so you got to clear space. So do what you got to do. Make them believe that teep. Once you get a reaction here, step forward and off to the angle. Follow up that rear knee. Now, once it comes time to drill, if you want to improve individual techniques, what I like to do is set rounds, generally shorter rounds. So I'll get my phone timer going and I'll set something like 10 rounds of 1 minute each, and I'll just keep them going continuously, and I'll practice individual skills on each round. So I might have round 1, just jabs. So I'm working everything, not only the jab technique itself, but how to set it up, different angles, what to do before and after, and I just want to perfect that one technique. Now I could also do something like stringing together jabs and hooks. So I might have a round that's only left side jabs. Right? Now, you might have a round where you want to work a particular combination. 1, 2, 3 low kick, right? Ding, ding, ding. So you can work that over and over. Just get used to the range, get used to the rhythm, and start to really make it your own, right? It's going to be times that you want to work your development in an overall sense rather than individualizing techniques, right? So when it comes time to bring it all together, I like to set longer rounds anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes, and with a break anywhere between 30 seconds and a minute long, and try to string them together. And when I'm doing these, what I'm going to call flow rounds, I like to put on some music and try to vibe out a little bit, right? So you want to keep good rhythm going, and you want to keep efficient, like your fight realistic, right? Don't want to use too much energy. Want to think about your defense. Think about what might be coming back at you, right? Think about having the right range. This time you're visualizing an opponent and what they may be doing back at you. And this is the chance to simulate what you would be doing in a sparring match or a fight. Now remember, in a sparring match, especially when you're new to it, it's a lot different than just wheeling on a bag, because they're punching you back, right? Makes a huge, huge difference. So while you're doing these rounds, these flow rounds, visualize. Think about what might be coming. There might be a jab coming that I parry. There might be a hook coming that I block. There might be a kick coming that I check. Maybe a head kick, get out of the way, right? So the defense is important, especially after you throw your strikes, because if you get in the habit of just hitting the bag and staying here, you're going to get lit up. So you got to think, how am I going to get in? How am I going to get out? What may be interrupting me? What problems may I face, right? Now this will come more with experience, but a simple thing to do is to keep defense in mind, and whatever you end a combination with, imagine it's being thrown back at you. So I jab. I imagine a jab's coming at me, so I parry it. 1, 2, 3, ended with a left hook. So I assume a left hook's coming at me, I'm gonna block. Then you can think about what to do after that, right? Where I can go 1, 2, 3, hook's coming at my head, I wanna roll out, right? 1, 2, 3, low kick that ended in a kick. So after throw my combination, work the block, think about what to do to follow up, right? So a couple of easy defensive things. Keep this tucked in. If I want to block the body, I hunch. If I want to block the hook, keep this up top and I roll with it slightly. Same thing with the straight, and I can roll with it, fire it back. Roll with it, fire it back, right? So you don't want to just be thinking offensively. You want to think defense as well. Think about how to enter in, how to get out, ideal angles. What if things go wrong, right? All these factors in consideration. A great thing to do when you're trying to use a punching bag to either increase your strength or your speed, stamina, something like that, is to have rounds where you're only going for speed, or rounds where you're only going for power, or rounds where you're alternating, maybe 30 seconds each, and it'll test your bodies in a different way. So when you're doing these types of rounds and the idea is to just improve your fitness, don't worry so much about technique. Obviously you want your technique to be good, but really you're trying to work the muscles and heart and that sort of thing, right? So if I'm doing a power round, I might throw heavy attacks, right? Throw a lot into each technique, right? Make sure you got weight behind it. That's gonna work your muscles in a different way than your speed round. So one of the things that's good to do, I like to set a timer where it's 30 seconds, 30 seconds, 30 seconds, 30 seconds for a total of 3 minutes. So I'll go heavy, 30 seconds. Boom, 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 boom. And then you hear that timer and speed. Hear that timer? It's power. Speed. So you're gonna work your body in different ways. Another good thing to do is add a burnout at the end of each round. So you working your technique rounds, working your flow rounds, and you can end at the end. So it's like, set a timer for, okay, 30 seconds left in the round. So you're working your flow, nice and efficient. And you hear ding, ding, ding. It's like, oh, shit. How many punches can I get? That's 30 seconds. How many hooks can I get? It's 30 seconds, right? Something like that. Challenge yourself, push yourself. As many kicks as you can throw. Boom, 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 right? Push that hard.